Rhonda Larson, it is a privilege to have you at the table, at the Nyberg table.
It's my privilege.
As a Grammy Award-winning flutist. How does one become that?
Wow.
You told me you were 10 in Montana, and then what happened?
Yeah, you know, I was really born wanting to play flute, and
How does one know that?
I don't know. I thought that everybody arrived on the planet knowing what they wanted to do, because I was so sure that when 5th grade came along and we had to try out the instrument of our choice, and what if I couldn't play flute? Here he's bringing the flute to me. What if I won't be able to play?
Did you see it somewhere?
I don't. I must have. I had to have, and I had to have heard it. I certainly knew what it was, and I started playing piano in 2nd grade. My grandma taught me, but that was an appeasement, like to just hold your horses till 5th grade. And that day, and I was able to blow the flute, and I ran out of the band room, went and called my mom and said, I can play.
I find that fascinating.
I know, and like even all through college, I remember my college boyfriend, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be a violinist, and I was like, what? If you don't know, how dare you? But then I realized that it's an unusual thing. I really thought everybody knew what they wanted to do.
Did you grow up in a musical family?
Not really. I mean, my mother's side of the family was musical. My grandmother, that's my mom's side, played piano. My mother sang, played trumpet, played accordion.
Okay, so you were around it.
Yes, my dad, he could turn the radio on, and that's all he wanted to do.
So you started playing the flute at 10,
Yeah.
and then what starts to happen? Do you excel right away?
Oh yeah, I can only now call it a bit obsessive, you know, because I loved it so much. I practiced in a closet so nobody could bug me.
Well, the acoustics in there with the clothing must have
Yes,
been
there were
great.
clothes on both ends,
right.
you know, for me. But then nobody could bother me. I could shut the doors, and you know, I had 3 older sisters, so it's like I could just be there and go the long way of the closet and play my flute, you know. And I was in love with it from day one. And I used to make T-shirts that said "Flute Power," and it was funny, you know.
So you go through high school, and I'm assuming you're in the band or in the orchestra.
Band and orchestra.
Then what happens?
Well, you know, all through high school, you start doing competitions, solo competitions that are organized, which are wonderful. They all still exist.
And you started winning them.
Not always won them, but you know, creating some notoriety, and people knew that I had some talent. And I got my first private teacher in 8th grade, and so that really helped. And she was a great teacher, and you know, and she happened to be I had a great band director too. I was really fortunate that the right people were my teachers, and not only fostered what I did, but helped grow it, you know, in the most inspiring way.
So after high school, what happens?
Let's see. After high school, college, and I went to college in Moscow, Idaho. My dream was to go to Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, and they only accept 1 person a year. But I wanted to go because I was putting myself through college. So if you get in, it's free, and all you study is music. That's all I wanted. I didn't want the general courses. You know, I already knew that this is where. So I auditioned for 3 years in a row. And the flute teacher always said to me, oh, Rhonda, if I could take 1 more, I'd take you. But then the last year that I went there, he said to me, his name was Julius Baker, he was first flute in New York Philharmonic, and he said, Rhonda, I think you should stay where you are, because the city will change you, and you have such a spectacular thing going for yourself.
In Moscow?
Yeah, he liked my personality and everything, so he thought the city would ruin me. And you know what? It's not what I wanted to hear, but I think he ended up doing me a huge favor. So I stayed, and I got to skip school and practice and get away with that.
Oh my gosh! So when was your big debut on stage?
A year before my junior year of college, there was a big flute competition, the National Flute Association competition, young artist competition, and I got in. You know, they only take 6 people, and then narrow it down to 3 finalists. And I was just so, you know, here I'm coming from Moscow, Idaho, and there's a person from Juilliard, they're from all over, and I was just so afraid I didn't want to go there and embarrass myself. Well, it turns out I won, and everybody was like, where'd she come from, you know, Idaho? So 2nd place was Juilliard, and 3rd place was from Israel, you know, so that was stunning, that was amazing, and my life really changed then. And part of the prize that particular year was a Carnegie Recital Hall debut. Mm-hmm. So, and that didn't come for two more years just because of scheduling difficulties. So I just got this huge boost. But then, so then I'm in my senior year now, having won that. And at the end of my senior year, I meet Paul Winter, who came out to perform. And he heard me play in a little music making workshop that he did. And, you know, to make a long story short, I walked out of college into the consort, you know. And so the whole world was right there.
It was your oyster.
Yeah.
Were you composing by then?
No.
Did they make you compose in college? When did that?
Oh yeah, they make you compose in college. You know, like you have to write Bach. You have to do harmonization like Bach
Sure.
did it, and I never loved that. I always called it, you know, mucking in the chords. But I learned later. Later, I learned to appreciate that deeply. But no, see, the consort inspired. Every night we'd perform in the consort. We always did a piece that he called a free piece. Mm-hmm. And we'd turn out the lights. The whole audience was in the dark. We were in dark on the stage, and we'd improvise. And it always turned into an incredible piece of music, and it was amazing. So that was the only time and in fact, when I met Paul Winter, he said, go ahead, play something. This is in the Cathedral of St. John in New York City. That's where they're artists in residence. And I was like, oh, I can't just tell him I don't improvise, because you can't just say no to the universe
so you
right
had to
here.
fake it.
No, I just decided, well, I hesitated, and he said, well, just play long tones, which just means slow tone notes, you know. And I was like, oh, I can do that.
What did you give me?
Oh, you know, so you just play long notes.
Can you do that?
Well,
just,
and I started
just give me a long note.
Okay, so here's what happened. Instead of like doing it in a scale, it immediately started to turn into a melody. So you just, you know, that kind of thing, and the 6-second reverb in the cathedral. So the flute is lingering out there,
haunting.
Yeah,
kind
and
of.
so that all that changed my life, you know. And that was really the final time he heard me play, where I was like, okay, join the consort.
So your life takes off,
Yeah,
and you start playing around the world.
my first tour was to Moscow, Russia, from Moscow, Idaho.
How old are you?
To Moscow, Russia. 23
Wow.
years old. Yeah.
From Idaho
Yeah.
to Moscow.
I know. How strange is that? And it was
Well, but you were
just-
in Moscow, Idaho.
Yeah, that's Moscow, and then in Russia it's Moscow,
Right.
Moscow. So they, you know, they have, but that it was stunning, and that was just when the perestroika had happened. You know,
Sure.
the trade, the opening up. So we were one of the first groups, really.
What was the audience like in Russia?
Oh, you could have heard a pin drop. They were hungry for anything in their soul, any meaningful thing, and jazz. They love jazz, but we're not really jazz, but they kind of build it that way. So, but it's jazzy, you know.
So when did you start composing, and how
Well-
did you win a Grammy?
You know, and people always ask me in the concert, "Oh, do you compose too?" I was like, "Oh no, I don't. I'm not one of. I don't have that talent." But when I decided it was time for me to move on after 6+ years with the consort and a great education and a changing of my musical palette entirely, because I was classical flutist with the blinders on, you know, and so it changed everything for me. And I really wanted different music. I wanted music that spoke more to a general public than just a classical audience.
And what is the name of the genre that you have come up with? Cross-cultural, multi-genre music?
Well, because
is
there is not a name. That's the trouble. Every musician will say this unless they're in a specific category. I'm really not. My tastes are very varied. And what I discovered pretty quickly out on my own after the concert is, wow, wait a minute, I can play any music I like.
Can you do
permitted
jazz
to
as
do
well?
that. I'm
You don't
not
love
an
it.
improviser. Jazz doesn't make me come alive. I mean,
Right,
I
right.
appreciate it so much, but it's not particularly like I love Celtic. I love ethnic music. And my flutes, I started collecting ethnic flutes, so that got me into their, you know, whatever country the flute was from, then I would study that music, you know, by buying the CDs.
What is it about the flute?
You know, I've always wondered.
It could have been a clarinet. But
Oh,
it was
I
the
know.
flute. What was it about the flute?
My sister ruined the clarinet for me because she played that, and she didn't ever practice.
Okay.
So, you know, no, it was always flute. I've always wondered. I think because I don't know how else to say it except that it seems to be, if there's a sound of your soul, that's mine.
All right, let's hear the different flutes that you
Yeah.
brought.
This is-
Describe them first.
Sure, it's a crystal flute.
It's glass and it
Yeah.
has flowers on it. It's
Yeah, some of
stunning.
them don't have flowers. This is made by a man who makes a husband and wife business that put these out one by one. They've gotten really popular. So sometimes they're clear with no decorations. Beautiful sound. I got one just because I thought it would be some decoration. But not only did it play, it's perfectly in tune and beautiful. So now I have many of them. Yeah, so it lends itself well to Celtic music because of the slides on the, you know how they slide into a note from another note. You'll hear it. It's just a little bit of a Celtic tune. And there's something about, why a flute? Also the use of air to not just breathe, but to produce sound and to produce music. So it's like going so much deeper with what your human body already gives you. You have to breathe all the time. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so strange.
This one, where's it from and what does it sound like?
This is another Celtic whistle. And it's made of wood. They're called penny whistles when they're this size, this particular size. So I call this one a many penny whistle because it's not just tin, it's wood, it's special, and beautiful. Another great Celtic sound. It's so fun,
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Breath control.
Yeah.
That's something you have to learn. Or were you pretty quick to that?
No, in fact, children who begin flute for the first
'Cause you
time
teach
get
as
very
well.
dizzy. Yeah. They have to, it's better if they're sitting because they'll get very dizzy and like you really
been
are
there.
like, yeah.
Not with the flute, but
And
I
so it
understand what
takes
you mean.
time to get used to it, and literally, to this very day, I'm a vigorous exerciser, aerobic and everything, yoga as well. But this has to keep working in order for this to work because
Let's play this one next because
Yeah.
this one I want to save for last.
yeah. And the fact
That's your
is,
basic flute,
yes,
if you will.
Western European flute is this beautiful thing. It can do anything. It's my favorite because it can do anything.
Give me a range when you play this.
You mean
Different sounds that you can
sure.
get out of that flute.
Yeah, let me just give you a little taste
Sure.
and see if.
Wow.
Some. When it goes high, up.
Low notes on that as well?
Most people know about that. Yeah, and the low, that's what I just love the. It's just so delicious. And ironically, the hardest part about the flute are the low notes. The high notes, they're there.
Dime a dozen.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, this one. Well, what about this flute?
Now I brought this in because we just did a trip to China.
And you're about to go?
Yeah, we're about to go for 6 weeks, but that was a 3-week tour that we just did. So this is a Chinese flute called a dizi. D-I-Z-I is how it's spelled. They have this little membrane here. It's like a kazoo membrane, so it vibrates, and it makes this buzzing sound. That's a little much for me, so I taped it down so it won't ring, but you'll hear the...
So you're an engineer as well?
Yeah, you got to kind of, make them so you can live with them. So this is actually ancient Chinese melody, almost 2,000 years
And
old.
what will you be playing in China when you go?
Well, all my music, much of which I've written.
And their music as well?
Well, they wanted us to come with a Chinese tune, and I hadn't yet. You know, I try to have music from all over the world, and we hadn't been to China yet. So I found this melody and fell in love with it because it doesn't sound Chinese, because we've all heard Chinese music, and it's quite idiomatic, and I wanted something that I could really live with. So this time around we'll come with 3 Chinese tunes, because they really love it. But the audience liked our music in general, so that was, you know, it's kind of a flute culture. They have a lot of flute in their music culture. So here's this tune. It comes from the Han Dynasty.
Wow.
It was really very passionate sound. And, you know, sometimes, like, it's a very playful sound, too. It has both elements. You can get very soulful with it or snappy, playful, you know.
Well, your life is the flute. I
It
can
sure
tell.
is, yeah.
Tell me about the Grammy. Tell me about
Well, that
how
was
it
with the
happened.
Paul Winter Consort. That was really great. I must confess, we didn't think we'd win. You know, we went. It was at Radio City Music Hall, and so we went to the ceremony.
But meaningful to you as a musician.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, like, stunning. Just to be a part of the ceremony is very exciting, because it's everybody at the highest element of their game in the music world, and that's where it is. And then they announced the winners, and we won. And we had talked beforehand. The guys who came also from the band, we were together. Paul Winter didn't go because he didn't think we'd win. And so the guys said to me, "Well, if we win, Rhonda, you give the acceptance speech." And I was like, "Yeah, right." You know, well, we won, so I got to do. It was incredible.
When someone watches you on stage, you're moving around, you're playing
Yes.
the flute.
Yes.
There's a band, it's a whole show.
Right, not sitting. I am.
Thank you for sitting and doing
Rarely
this.
sitting. Yeah, I like sitting because, in fact, I practice sitting frequently just because you're tired. You know.
In just closing this, and I could talk to you for a long
Sure.
time because there are so many different kinds of flutes, and you have your multicultural sound that you have. You're doing a Kickstarter campaign. What is that about?
Yeah, thank you. It just went live yesterday. On this next tour to China, we're playing 25 cities in China, and we'll be there for 6 weeks. And we want to bring an amazing videographer and photographer, so that at the end of the tour, and by next July, we release a DVD capturing the soul of China, you know, from our travels, and then some of our performances, bits of our performance, but really a view of China that so few people will have seen,
Sure.
you know. And already we've seen, it's already been a beautiful 3-week tour to China, and very unusual, different than I expected. So that's our campaign. We're asking people to let us bring him, and it pays for him, and to make the product, you know. He's an extraordinary videographer.
And then give it to the world.
Absolutely, it's something we get to give back. Besides us performing, that's another element that we get to give back.
Rhonda Larson, you're a gift to
Well,
music.
thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.